I would like you to meet Marija. I will present her to you. I think that in the material you could have read and could have seen that Marija has been in this writing poetry, writing everything, I could say, that could be written for a long period of time. But let me show you the little note about her. And I don't know if, no, I didn't do it. It's a bit difficult for me now to Geoc advice to Julia in 1994, Things for Personal Use, 1994, The Era of Salome in 1996, My Other Doe, 201, Querida, 20 poems on love and one love poem, the novel Ekaterini, translated into English by Will Firth. Firth, is that okay?
Well, that's how he pronounces.
Okay. Well, I was thinking about calling Flirt.
Yes. He told me. I don't know.
Wasn't really sure. Intactum, Streetwalkers or Strays, Shen, because this is also the foreign word in Serbian, and Breathing Technique, which is different from the book that Marija has shown. It's a collection of her poetry and Breathing Technique that was translated and published in 2020, is actually a large selection of her poetry, of her poems, and translated by Sibyl and Forrester. And I would also like to add to this list of the genres that has been just been presented to you, also Marija's Facebook posts, which I enjoy, not only me, but a lot of us enjoy very much, because she writes, just as she writes in her poetry about the things that are around us, and writes in the way, I will quote now our colleague Zorica Bečanić-Nikolić, who wrote a lot about Marija's poetry. Zorica said that her poems are deep and cheerful and bitter. And I would add, or I would just go a little bit further from that. I would say that they also can be brutal and very gentle at the same time, and you will soon see. The same is with her Facebook posts, and I put the stress on it because actually Marija and I got in closer contact via that social network, and I hope that networking will help us spread the word about her poetry, especially now when there is such a large selection of her poetry translated, and you can really enjoy it. Also, some, as I said, her novel Ekaterini has been translated, and her poems are also in this huge and very important anthology of Serbian poetry done by Biljana Bradović and Dubravka Đurić, who is also with us tonight. So Marija and I decided to made a little, how can I say, some order of appearances of her poems. And I think that you would all like to get to know her poetry as soon as possible. So we decided to begin with the
beginning.
From the beginning, yes. But my problem is now of the technical side. Yes, I'm trying to open the right file. I'm sorry to be so. Okay, so the first poem is the beginning of cartography. All the poems that you will see tonight in English has been translated, as I said, by Sibyl and Forrester. And we are both very thankful to her that she let us use these translations. So the only thing I have to do now is to share screen. Okay. Marija will read in Serbian, and you can follow the translation, both translation and the original on the screen.
Before I read the beginning poem from the beginning, which is the beginning of cartography, I want to thank you, Biljana, on this introduction. I mean, it's nice to hear, it's nice to hear things like that, especially that we know each other, that I know how sincere you are. I mean, I know that you really mean it, everything that you said, and I know that your respect that you are showing underlined is genuine. So thank you. As for Facebook, also thank you a lot for all your support for my short notes. The short notes that I'm writing, and that you are encouraging me to continue writing, and maybe I don't know, put together in some book someday. But I had to smile when you were describing I mean, all my characteristics. It sounds like a split personality, like brutal and gentle. That's okay. So I will read in Serbian, as we call it today, ex-Serbo-Croatian, for the ones who don't speak the language, just to hear the sound of it, the rhythm of it, because music is something that is, or melody, let's say, is something that is very important to me. And there were some interviews that I managed to remember my own words, which is always a problem to me. I remember that I was saying that I see keyboard as claviatura, Biljana, help.
It's a keyboard.
It's a keyboard, all right. I mean, like a keyboard with letters as a keyboard, with as a piano keyboard, So in other words, like when I'm writing, like I'm composing. All right. Početak kartografije. Biti stvar bez upotrebne vrednosti. Biti stvar koja vremenom dobija na vrednosti, a niko ne zna zašto. Dozvoliti da te nazivaju ukrasnim predmetom. Čuti da si višak. Čuti da se bez tebe ne može. Disati u sebi. Menjati vlasnike. Biti neposedovan. Biti predmet divljenja. Premeštati se, izbeći seobe, biti dovoljan. Biti brod, licem okrenut dnu, biti na oba kraja dubine. Ostavljati trag nevečan, uplovljavati, isplovljavati na isti način. Biti voljen u lukama, biti brod, voleti veći deo života na otvorenom moru, sanjati o lukama. Izbeći čekanje, kretati se uvek istom stazom od luke ka njoj, zabavljen mrežama na palubi, pretvarati tovar u priče, biti brod, nositi sebe bez napora, biti rod, svakome, muškarcima, ženama, algama, tigrovima u skoku na jelena, lotosima nastanjenim u sopstvenim suzama, ostrvima, pećinama čija je bar jedna odaja neispitana biti orođena. Voleti tebe, a to nikad ne saznati. Biti uvek iznenada, nova radost i neočekivani bol. Izbeći postojanje, kap na tvojoj koži koja je već sećanje na dodir. Kap je već druga kap. Biti zapravo nikad, biti sad, jednina u prolazu. To je početak.
Thank you very much. And we said 2 for the beginning, and the other one is the era of tenderness, a very short one, haiku almost.
Okay, so first one was brutal and this one is gentle.
No, they're both this at the same time.
Well, I will remember this forever because I like it. Doba nežnosti. Otkako postoje, umetnost pisanja i umetnost čitanja proveravaju jednu drugu.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for listening to me.
Okay, so I have some questions. I mean, the first question, I wanted these 2 to be read so that the audience can hear that I was right in characterization of your poetry. I'm joking. That these poems, for the beginning, one tells the connection between reading and writing, and the second one, actually the first one you read, is for me a poem of the world within the one who sings it, who is saying this poem. So like it's a poem about metamorphosis, the ability of the different perception that you positively have. But the first question is connected to something that I read at the beginning of the note of your bio note, is about your education. What is the impact of your education, the reading that you went through at the department of the general literature, and before that and after that in your life, and how does your reading, to paraphrase the translation of the era of tenderness, how does your reading verifies your writing, and vice versa?
Well, now it's inevitable to sound philosophical, so please excuse me that I'm going to sound philosophical because it's usually not my style. I like it, so everything simple. I believe in simplicity. I think that everything is intertwined. Did I say that well? And that intertwined. And that I mean, reading books. I was not a typical child who, well, typical child, would it be? I mean, I was not one of those children who are, you know, crazy about books, living in the world of books instead of being outdoors. On the contrary, I was a lot outdoors. But once I found out, I discovered that passion for very, very concrete book, I mean, literature. So that there was a passion in literature. It's at that very moment became one of my passions. So that is the reason why I decided to study literature, because it is my passion. It's not that I don't have other passions, and it's not that I wasn't in dilemma whether to, you know, enroll this or that, and that's all another story and long story. So inevitably that there is that sentence. Of course, I forgot the author because I'm so helpless with names and dates. Who said that the books are fed with other books, that they're eating and growing by eating other books, and that's the fact. So that influence is something that comes inevitably. But I would say that if you would ask me, for instance, like what influenced my writing, although I would say all writings, and art in general. I would incline, I'm inclined to say experience. No matter how general it might sound, but like the whole experience, and the part of it being reading, um, and the part of reading being literature.
And reading being your experience, yeah.
Right. I mean, recently, because you're following me on Facebook, you probably remember that, and say I know that Sibylla remembers that poem about reading white walls. So what can we read on white walls? We can, for instance, read our memories. We can read our thoughts. I mean, there are so many. I'm not going to mention all manuals, all, every T-shirt, billboard on the street, and everything is written. I mean, this is we live in the culture of writingness, I would say. So reading books is a part of it. And as you said, reading persons, reading minds and reading feelings also.
Yes, but while reading your poetry, I hear the echoes, and I don't need to go all the way back and say, oh, this is it, or this reminds me of that. Sometimes you say in the middle of the poem or at the beginning, you dedicate the poem to a certain person, or you mention the work itself, like The Leaves of Grass, or you mention Vesna Parun. So we can recognize if we have this reference, if we know. Sometimes I just feel the atmosphere. We talked about it. So this is what's really enchanting too. You feel like you're going through a huge library, and all these books are touching you gently from that echo that you hear, that I hear in your poetry. But there are places. I would like to ask you something about the places. There are also many topoi in your poetry, like in that poem when you say that you would want, all of a sudden you would want to go to Maldives and live there. But there is one special, I would say, from reading it. It's Greece. Not only like ancient Greece, like the classical myth, but in many ways, one can feel that Greece is really something special to you. And I would like to hear something about it.
It is, but I suppose that all of us, or let's say more realistically, many of us, have our own Arcadia, our own, country of our dreams, or what, Sibylla, what is the English pronunciation? Hyperborea or Hyperborea?
I don't know that one. I think Hyperborea.
Hyperborea. All right. Thank you, Sibylla. Number one, I mean, now the coincidence is that those are, Greek words and Greek, well, not places, but words, and that it's Greece in my case, that country of my dreams. The other more down to the ground fact is that my grandma Ekaterini was Greek, and also my mother was born in Thessaloniki. My grandma was from Thessaloniki, and my mother was born there. And I spent a lot of time there, and I don't know, I somehow fit the ambience, which I became aware many years after I started to fit the ambience. I was I think 36 when I was lying on a beach, and it seemed like one of those cliche sites, not sunbathing, but making a short break in between two eternal being in the water and diving. And a woman was calling her child, a Greek, I mean, Greek woman. And I was, I mean, I was touched. I was touched by the name, by the sound of that call. And all of a sudden, I felt like I've been there forever. I'm from there. It was so familiar. It was, I was so much part of that, that whole, you know, melody and picture and sense and everything. So that's the explanation that, I mean, apart from everything that we know, how beautiful that country is, and what's the importance of old antique Greek for our culture, based upon antique Greek culture. I mean, those are notions that we all know very well. But those are the only explanations that I came to.
Thank you. Well, how about reading the Vajna Tajna, the Wannabe Secret?
Okay. Plemeniti poklonici poezije, taj uzvišeni soj, uglavnom ne slute mnoge pute svirepe kud zapada pesnički rod. I to je pravda lepotom nazvana ravnoteže, dok nekog boli, drugi da vole verse. Van opažaja bumerang plete mreže. U tim ukrštajima nikome znanog voznog reda zapravo nastaju pesme. Nigde to ne piše, podrazumeva se. Bog da vam ne da ono što pesnik ni mahnit ne želi da spoznate. Te ponore gde se zaštićene mrklinom mreste najlepše reči.
Hvala. Evo. Oh, no, thank you very much. No, you can see now the place where the poetry is born in this poem, presented in this poem. But I wanted this poem to be read before I ask you about your own place and your own time, because you've been writing for a long time. And when reading this bio note,
I'm so old.
Oh, well, we are the same age, so don't read it in that way. So I was amazed, especially when I saw that in 90s you published a large number of poetry books, and this is.
But it was a golden age for all the criminals, so things happened to me.
So you profited.
Right. War profiteer.
Yeah, poetry profiteer. That sounds good.
I know, you know me, Billion. I have to joke. I mean, I can live.
Yeah, I know. So it's but this is when I came, you know, when I was going through this collection, and because it's chronological, and I was following these poems here for tonight's talk, and when I came to the beginning of the 21st century, I said, okay, now it has to be somehow different. This is the brutal side. That's what I'm saying. This is what, because you absorb also everything that is around us, and that time hasn't been easy, really, and it's visible. But when you read it, I didn't notice that. I mean, I see that there is this place where the words are born, or however it was said. I know that it's the place of pain. You know that. You see that there is something really difficult going on, but you make it sound, well, this is the art, this is the poetry. So I thought in the 21st century it would be easier, but then it was different, but not the same. I was really amazed by this. As I said, what happened? You published 2 books of poetry in 1994, just 1 year after 1993, when most of us were on the verge of hunger.
How it came to it. I mean, it was the surrealistic sequence of events.
Yeah.
It's not that they were written at the same time, of course, because it takes me at least 4 years on average. I know that now. I mean, I know that at the beginning. I never know, am I going to write something further, and I really don't worry about that. I certainly won't write anything that I think doesn't deserve to be written. That I mean, just for the writing's sake, just to call myself, although I don't call myself a writer, I call myself a person who writes. But for some surrealistic reason, I ended up on a so-called blacklist, and of writers who were forbidden, and those were all I will find out later on famous writers, except for me, total beginner. Now I'm not sure, because I haven't seen my what is that called, dossier file, whatever. It's not accessible to me yet in the police, but one day I will know how did I end up on that blacklist. But I did, and nobody wanted to publish my I mean, any kind of my book, anything that is signed by my name. And at the time, in 1994, I accumulated 2 manuscripts. First was the Elegic Advice for Julia, and this the second one, the Things for Personal Use. I was working on Radio Belgrade as a journalist, and I had an interview with our one of our famous poets at the time, and very good poets. She liked me like at the first sight, and she liked the question, and very soon she figured out that I studied literature, and asked me if I wrote something. Anyhow, she insisted to read my manuscript, and when she read it, she said, well, both of them actually, oh, this has to be published. This has to be published. And she knew the whole story, but her husband was the editor-in-chief in one of our most famous publishers at the time. By the way, they rejected, I think, about 3 times. I'm a Capricorn in Zodiac, a very persistent person. So the fact that they rejected me once didn't prevent me to go 3 times there. And I said, well, they rejected me very convincingly. They want. She said, well, I will threaten him with divorce. And that's actually what happened, and that's how my first book was published. The man was desperate. He called me his office, and he said, I know that this is completely idiotic what I'm going to ask from you, but you know, it is my not only position, but my job is in question, my existence, and hers also. She's not aware of that. Can you talk to her? And I said, well, you know her better than I do, and so far I see that, I mean, that once she I mean, she has a plan of something, it's impossible to to make her to change her opinion. And so when the other publishers, saw that ice was broken, so to speak, then at the same year, I got an invitation because this stupid blacklist made me somehow, to a certain extent, famous. Because this is a country, this is area where gossips are always, something that is always going to be more sweet than literature. And people like gossips. And so on those bases, I was famous at the time. And I got the invitation from Prosveta the same year. So from the blacklist, for another book. They knew I had another book, and that's how it began. I mean,
Oh, good. Very good. And thanks to
I mean that you cannot deny that there are not elements of crime in that story.
no, but there are elements of poetic and women's solidarity, you must say. So maybe we can go a bit further to that question about the gender you speak from. Well, I will go back to Zorica, to my colleague analysis of your poetry, and she says that the lyrical voice is expressed in the masculine and feminine gender, while also at times identified with all grammatic persons, both in singular and in plural. So we can say that the gender you speak from is volatile. And I would like to ask you, do you feel what determines your gender position, how to say, in
Yes,
your
I
certain
understand. I
poetry?
understand
Yeah,
what are you asking. But
yeah.
first of all, it's necessary to make that distinction between, gender, feeling gender in life as a person, and gender in writing. Those are two different things, because when you're writing, you're making characters. First person, in my opinion, should what we see as a writing. I'm not going to say professional writing because it sounds snobbish, but certainly enlightened, let's say, writing must not, should not be confessional. Of course, you're using your own experience. Of course, you're your own medium. I mean, that goes without saying, but it should not be confessional. I mean, it's really could be really a caricature to pack your life and your thoughts and your worries and your sorrows and your griefs and everything, and to have that published and to expect people to read that. I mean, maybe a few people, your friends, but not more than that. Okay, so much about I have nothing against confession as a phenomenon, but this is not a place for it. This is a place for building, building text, and which includes building characters. So gender and how should I say, gender shaping in my writing, or at least I'm trying that it is always in the function of the character, and the whole dramaturgy of is that right, Sybil, and dramaturgy? I'm not
Yes,
sure.
dramaturgy.
Dramaturgy, thank you. Well, this is my translator. I have to ask her of the text. To me, dramaturgy is very, very important. I mean, all those, well, this is Greece, you see. Your first question somehow made me to think about rhapsody. So the one who is singing, a poet who is singing poetry. It means that it goes without saying that it is melodic, but also in those fundaments of our culture, which is ancient Greek culture. We have drama and poetry, being in symbiosis. And I see all that as, poetry also, and every text actually as part or wholeness of dramaturgy. And gender is one of those means.
Yeah. Thank you. So can we read now The Stranger? I think this is a poem which is so obviously dramatic.
I can,
So,
of course, and thank you. But I just want to say, as for my life, I somehow, because I have a lot of love poems that are dedicated to women. I feel, that's my feeling, and I know that this is not going to sound very popular nowadays, that it somehow doesn't fit to acute political correctness, but my feeling of gender is of something fluid, and I really wouldn't like to maybe I'm giving to myself a lot of freedom, I don't know, but also I'm paying the price for it, and it's not low, to fall in love with a person, whether it's going to appear in male or female, not shape is not the right word, but emanation, let's say. I mean, who can predict that? But I feel need for that freedom, and I feel that is something authentic.
thank you.
So I know this is like extended, but I had a need to clarify that,
Okay, I might have some technical problems with going to the next page of this poem in English, because this is not from the book. This is from the, okay, but okay, so.
No, it's clear. Strankinja. Ja ne mogu biti odavde gde nežnost nema ni ime. Nisam mislila dalje od prodavnice, ove ovde u kojoj sam za prodavačicu Miko. Ponela sam sitne pare i nikakve druge vrednosti ili namere. 33 koraka je to. Znam tačno. 33. Brojala sam toliko puta. 1, 2, 3, 4. 5 uzviknem kad čujem gde gledaš, stoko. Pente, pošto oni, šta vodaš, kerove, kurvo smrdljiva. Znam ja šta tebi treba. 6, sve si deblja i deblja. Vređaš pogled na devojčice sa džez baleta. Neko mi tiho poželi dobar dan. Nekome tiho poželim dobar dan. Veka mrmlja mantru za svaki slučaj. Oko 22, blizu ulaza spasa, baba u perjanoj jakni, glave obmotane šalom, šapuće babi u kaputu, babi sa trajnom. Ni momka nek moli dete, more ko zna, možda je lezbejka, ili sa bratom nešto, ma svega u današnje vreme ima. 23, 2 pomoranđe, jogurt, novine i hleb u kesi. Kod lifta škripa naglog kočenja, tup, canger, tras, ali već je 30 i ne vidim van. Razaznajem zvukove, poznate su mi reči, sećam se svega, 33, znam. Dobro pamćenje me izdaje, nikada tako usamljena kao na putu do prodavnice. I get a little bit upset while reading this poem.
Yes, it is, and it's kind of a very dramatic one too, and speaks so much about the feeling of the world, and within a word, and in a very small place, but it's
Yes.
something special. Thank you. I think that I do have many more questions, but I'm sure that there will be a lot of questions also from our guests tonight. So I would give the floor to you.
I would like to hear them. Everybody's shy. Are you textless or shall I take that as a comment?
Well, maybe.
Dubravka, are you alive, honey?
I just wanted to start because nobody wanted to. So, okay.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Biljana, to inviting me also, because I am, how do you say, volume. I like Marija's poetry, and I like Biljana's work. Whenever she is doing, she's very energetic and important actor in this place. So I enjoyed the talk between you, conversation. Okay, I made a note, 3 things that you said in last segment for me are interesting. So if you can explain a bit more than you already said. You said when you are writing, you use your experience, but you always create a character, or I don't know if you use the character or what other English.
Yes, a character, yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Could you explain more on it, or you think you already explained it?
Well, you know, building a character, people usually expect that that is something that only playwriters do, or screenplay writers. But I believe that all writers make characters, and that basically, you know, if we would go to some extreme, every single text is sort of a replica, because we think of it, because we, you know, shape it. And when you do that deliberately, then it is what I call a dramaturgy. And so I don't know. I think that you were writing about the Age of Saloma book. Is that so, or I?
Yes, but it was a long time ago.
Oh, okay, that was a long time ago. But if you can recall, there are like in one poem, maybe that long poem, that's called the Age of Saloma, the Age of Saloma. Like 2 or 3 or maybe even more voices, different voices. And so to me it was you know, like coordinating a choir.
Yeah, but
in that sense, anyhow, it's not a confession.
Yes, and connected with all what you said and what you ask, and what I ask, you connected drama and poetry, and you again repeated the same phrases, which is so interesting for me. Dramaturgy is important. What is concretely in poetry? What do you mean by dramaturgy?
It's composition. It's composition, Dubravka.
Why you don't use composition but dramaturgy, and said drama and poetry are in symbiosis?
I said at the beginning that I feel as I'm composing a music, but why I use it, it's because of that closeness and symbiosis of drama and poetry. That is antique, as we know. And because, I mean, the fact is that we use words, you know, not only melody. That is why dramaturgy. And also because of some poems like this one, the last one that I, by the way, take as my most autobiographical poem, the last one that I read, I mean. That's why. Then also that I pay a lot of attention to all the mise-en-scène, especially if something that is going on the street. Maybe Sibylle can explain that better, because when we were exchanging, I mean, that was one of the most beautiful, together with Will Fiert, who translated Ekaterini, my experience with translators. And we build up a long and I hope everlasting dialogue through those, you know, question answers, emails, and meetings, and learned a lot about each other's and about, you know, poetics. So maybe Sibylle and you can explain that better than I do, because you were suffering with those poems of mine, like Duh iz Plinske boce.
Yes, Duh iz Plinske boce was very difficult. A gas bottle in English, although my science colleagues told me that's all right, it doesn't really sound like anything. We would say an oxygen tank, but it has to be a bottle so that the duh can come out. But the dramaturgy, the idea of the poet being a dramaturge, makes sense to me because it's never unmediated autobiography. It's always, to some extent, a performance. And so I think whether the voice of the speaker in the poem is very close to the poet's own voice, as Marija said for the last poem she read, or quite distant, maybe it's a persona. In a way, you are directing. There's a mediated quality, I think.
Yes, yes, thank you. Performing, right? That's the right word. That's exactly how I feel.
If I may add, this is so visible in the way Sibylle reads her translation of her translations of your poetry. There was a literary evening on beginning of September, I think, and this was really amazing, listening to these poems in two languages and in two different kinds of interpretation. And I would really say that in Sibylle's reading, this dramatic, also often very dramatic traits of your poetry were so visible, maybe even because this was in different language, in foreign language, so maybe also because of that. But I saw that then you can see it's not a writer, it's somebody who's very close to these poems, gives them a birth in a different language, but still can feel that this is there is a role to play. So maybe I'm misinterpreting what Sibylle felt, but this is how I saw it. You know, it's like some role to go in, and this was really brilliant. And Sibylle, would you mind to read one poem that we left, like the final poem for tonight? I would ask you and Marija to read this
it's 40
poem.
days, Sibylle.
Thank you. Okay.
Did you have it by hand?
Yeah, I have it on my screen.
No, I asked Sibylle, I mean, because
it's this one. Can you see it, Sibylle?
Sibylle?
I have a copy of the book, so I don't.
Okay.
You really have the copy by your
That's
side.
63. That's 63.
So touching.
Okay, so
thank you.
Okay, Maria, if you would read the first and then Sibyl or whatever.
40 dana nisam napisala pesmu, ja koja ne brojim dane naročito. Upamtila sam početak neizrecivog. 40 dana slušam savršenstvo s mene nemih stihova koji se ne daju zbuniti rečima, očarana stvaranjem neprestanog prerušavanja ničega u sve.
Thank you.
40 days I haven't written a poem. I who do not count, especially days, fixed in memory the start of the unutterable. 40 days I've been listening to the perfection of mutely alternating verses that won't let themselves be tripped up by words, enchanted by the creation of an incessant disguise of nothing as everything.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Until like a professional actress.
Yes, but
Really?
you can see how in both languages it has its rhythm and how, you know, these roles are performed similarly but differently. So this was really something. Okay.
Well, we also have to know, excuse me for interrupting you, Biljana, that apart from being a brilliant professor and the translator, Sibyl is a fantastic poet. So, you know, it also contributes to this melody and to her, I would say, version, because translation always has to be a version. And we call this book that I'm touched that Sibyl has by her side. We call this book our book. And it is, I mean, both of us wrote it.
Okay, I see one hand. It's Magdalena Koch. Hello, Magda.
Hello, Biljana. Hello, Maria. Hello, Sibyl. Hello. I really wanted to use the occasion because you've read both versions, Serbian and English, and as we could see, you, Maria, write in the female gender. I mean, grammatically, yes, you can immediately see that it's a woman speaking. In English, of course, you can't have this effect. And I wanted to say it can be male or female voice, yes, grammatically taking it. And how do you cope, Sibyl, with such a situation with where is this female I in poetry or in also in novels or short stories? And is it can English-speaking reader catch it or not, or it's more, let's say, universal and less female? Thank you.
Thank you, Magdalena, for that wonderful question. I actually just gave a conference paper talking about that as one of the problems of translation, not only from Serbian, but from most Slavic languages, that the past tense verbs and adjectives, as well as nouns in English, it's only the third person singular that has a distinction of gender. And of course, there are languages like Estonian or Hungarian that don't even have the third person singular. So English is not as hard up as some languages, but it's true. For the first person singular and the second person singular, there's no way to convey. All you can do is find another place to put it. So there was one poem I translated by Marija where she calls her addressee dete. And I think we spoke about it actually, but after the fact, I put child in the translation, but it could have been boy or girl, right, depending on the addressee. So there have to be little ways to make up the difference, I think.
I have a lot of poems in like male gender written, first person male gender. We didn't read them tonight, but they exist, and that was Sine, and that's an interesting example, Sibyl. I mean, that tells a lot about our culture, that habit to address both boy and girl by sine, which is, I mean, originally male gender. And I was playing with that.
Yeah, and also brother, very often, you know, like, oh, brother, this or that. And when you say, okay, sister, you know, if somebody says to me sometimes, oh, brother, and I say, okay, sister, and the other is of the male gender, they could just get surprised because they don't feel it gendered, you know. So seeing it's difficult, yeah, from various reasons.
I have another question connected with your publisher. I mean, I treat you both as authors of this book, because a translator is a second author or is a half of author or halfway author. So I don't know how to put it in English. But is it this book was published in the US? Yes, am I right? So
Yes.
is it? Yeah, because I haven't seen it, just I didn't have it in my hands. And is it easy or difficult, or it's no problem to convince a publisher in the US to publish poetry written by women and also from a very niche language? Yes. How is the process like?
Another good
In
question.
Poland, it's not that easy.
Before Sibylan gives you the, how should I say, the realistic answer, my case is specific. To me, everything that has to do with my own country was so difficult. Not only publishers and the story that I told about being on blacklist, and I mean that didn't change very much later on. I had a lot of problems with publishing. With I'm also invisible. I mean, I belong. Not that I'm the only one. I belong to invisible writers in my culture, and so a lot of agony. Related to my own country, unfortunately. Whereas the sequence of events was such that everything that has to do with foreign editions with my books in foreign languages, which are English, German, Polish, Russian, and now Macedonian is seen as a foreign language also. That was coming so easy to me, you know, like nothing. I mean, like I only have to say, the only thing that remains to me is to say, yes, I'm so happy that it is so. So Sibylan is more competent to give you the right answer.
Magda, it's a very interesting process. Actually, I was invited by the publisher to find a Serbian woman poet that I liked. So I had translated for 2 projects by Zephyr Press. Zephyr is kind of an art publisher. They've done a lot of Russian things. They did the first complete translation of Anna Akhmatova. So they've been foregrounding women writers all along. And so I asked a couple of people I knew, and they said, "You want to read Marija Knežević?" And it's, you know, it's been good since then. But since I began that project, then I was invited by Biljana Obradović to contribute a few translations to that issue of Atlanta Review. And now there's another potential online project where there'll be several translations of poetry and prose from South Slavic languages. And of course, I suggested some new poems. So in my experience, it's been fairly easy. Now, Will Firth, who actually, I'm not sure, is that how he says his last name? I would say Firth.
He says Firth. Yeah, I asked him. Yes.
Because it's Scottish, of course. He has been trying to get publishers interested in a variety of projects. I don't think he translates poetry, but stories and novels. I'm a professor, and most of the time I'm teaching Russian language or Russian literature. And so if I can't place a particular thing, I still get paid next week, and it's all good. So I think it's lovely to be in a position where I'm kind of a happy amateur translator. It's much more difficult for people who really need to get that next book accepted. I don't know, but I think a couple of poems, it's easier to find a home for a couple of poems than to find a home for a novel. So, it's easier to find a home for a short story than for a novella, right? Because you can put it in a journal, you can get it into a special issue.
Well, you see, there are a lot of also translations that you probably have never heard of Serbian lady, and you don't have to. I mean, really, as for me, by books by Serbian lady writers, and the state, the Ministry for Culture, or I don't know, some private person, so-called controversial business person, as they are called in our country, are standing behind it. Therefore, we have the case. I found out about that on Sibelan's evening in Belgrade. I didn't know, and then Dr. Professor Svetlana Tomic informed us that I'm not, of course, going to tell her name. Certain quasi pseudo author has all her books translated and published in the States. Sibylan, did I remember that well? Is it in the States or?
You know, I hadn't even heard of that writer before, so it didn't stick in my mind very
No,
well.
you don't have to. I mean, really. But the fact is that, you know, something that is, I will be bold enough to say, trash is translated because of, you know, it is well connected here because of that whole nepotism network. Whereas we have, I suppose all of you know who is Isidora Sekulic. Only one passage, is that so, Sibylan, translated into English?
It was a short piece called Mala Crkva na Topčideru, which was, I think, 3 pages, and it was translated by a well-meaning priest whose English wasn't very good. But there is, actually, John Cox is working on a translation of.
Oh, good.
So
well, finally. So, you know who is Isidora Sekulic. I mean, this extreme example tells you everything that a position, I mean, that is why we are coming to a problem speaking about so-called terrain feminism, not theoretical, terrain feminism in Serbia. Because what rules the game are connections, not gender. And I don't think that I suffered here, but I suffered, and there is a lot. So much, I mean, a great deal of, yes, and that's whole another reason, I will explain it shortly, but in these social games, because I'm a woman, as much as I did, because I don't have anyone, metaphorically speaking, who is standing behind me. We also have some, you know, bad seed planted here. It's a rather irrational story, at least for me, and which implies misogyny.
Yeah, that's the word.
Is it well, I'm not sure in English because I never used it in English. Misogyny, and that applies to all women, being they, you know, writers or illiterate women. That is very, very strong. And I don't know if you know, that can be outrooted. Is that a word? Outrooted.
Rooted out.
Rooted out. Thank you. But in you know, social games and literature is pretty much seen in a post-Bolshevik style in Serbia as a very political thing. It is much more who you know than what you write and what gender you are.
But you must say that men are in better position in this political game. Just look at the Academy of Science and the leading persons and so on. I mean, there is a poet.
Well, I mean, you know, it's about a level of culture that we better skip on this occasion.
Yes, yes, that's better, because that would take us too long. And
I assume that we know, all of us, what that level is, and it is about that misogyny that I try to, I mean, illustrate briefly to make a sketch, I mean, of it. And I don't know, those, I mean, I have to say to you that I suffered a lot from powerful women here also. So, wow, it's a very complex issue. I mean,
yeah. But misogyny is not reserved for men only. Okay, Dubravka probably has a comment or another question.
Yes, I have a question, another, because Maria asked me and point to the book Saveti Juliji, because I wrote about that book. But my question is, do you think that your poetry in time changes? For me, for example, I read very carefully 3 of your poetry books. One is the first, Male stvari, jel tako beše se zove?
Things for personal use.
Things for personal use, then Saveti Julije i Moje drugo ti, jel tako beše?
Magic advices to you and my other though.
Yeah, and this is the 3 books that I very carefully read in different times. And my feeling is they are quite different comparing each other. So could you say something when you look back at your beginning and look where are you as a poet now? What was important? Do you think that there is some change or there is no change? Whatever you think about retrospectively.
Well, thank you very much for that, how should I say, statement more than a question, because I really hope you are right. And I really hope that each book is different, because otherwise it wouldn't make any sense to write another book. And I think that this is a clear poetics. I mean, write only when you have to say something, and that necessarily means something that you didn't say before previously. To me, it's very close that Arundhati Roy's way of thinking, and the fact that she wrote her second novel 20 years after the first one, not knowing, of course, is she going to write it ever. I read an interview when she got a Booker Prize.
Yeah.
Yes, a Booker Prize for The God of Small Things. And the journalist asked her, like, routine question, so what's your next book about? And she said, well, where did you get an idea that I have a next book? And that is how I feel the whole thing, the same way. So I hope you're right, Dubravka. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, people, for patience. I see a lot of, tired faces, and I feel guilty.
No, I think it's everyone is free to leave if I would say there are no he's here. So if she feels tired, but I think that this is I mean, what you have to say here is really, really exciting. So
these women are very polite. They wouldn't do that, but we don't have, but we shouldn't exploit that politeness. So please, please ask me whatever you want to ask, or whoever you want. You don't have to ask me. You can ask Sibilan or Biljana or Dubra or yourself. Ask yourself.
Aloud.
I'd like to ask you about the way you use Facebook to post your work. I find it really interesting, and it also makes it worth going on Facebook. How does that fit into other ways of informing people about your new writing? So having a reading, sending it to a newspaper, I don't know, getting it published, sending it to an editor. What does it add?
It fits perfectly. I see that now. I was very stubborn, and I was rejecting that idea of joining the Facebook for a long time. And then I had my leg broken, and I was, bored, and that's how I joined the Facebook. And I'm very happy that I did it. Not that I had my leg broken, but that I joined the Facebook, because the moment you put a piece on, whether it be a poem or a prose piece, and I really don't like, long texts on Facebook. I don't think that is appropriate, but I mean, it's an individual choice, of course. On Facebook, it's accessible. I mean, it's the question of accessibility that is very important nowadays, especially when people are used to internet as a device to reach almost everything. So and especially to me, Dubravka told me the other day that she couldn't find some of my books in the city library. Was it city or national? I don't remember, but the same thing. That she had been borrowed some years ago. So the books are disappearing. That's all somehow becoming less and less reliable. Whereas on Facebook, within one day, it happens that there are like, in my case, that varies from person to person, about almost about 100 reactions, about 10, 15, 12 comments, which is a lot. I mean, it cannot be compared to a literary magazine. First of all, there are less and less magazines. They come out when they collect money, and it happens that, a magazine doesn't come out for a year. Books also, it's a challenge trying to find a book of poetry in our most famous bookstores. That can be a challenge for TikTok network, social network, for instance, really, with a prize. And even I could give that prize, because you cannot find it. So Facebook is a place, and I think that you mentioned Russia also with the same situation, right? So that's becoming and then people know it, reader know it, that they are looking for. I'm one of those readers looking for poetry on Facebook.
Well, yes, I know some people who started actually on Facebook, but that's another topic.
Yes, that's
okay. Any more questions? If not, I can only say thank you, Marija. Thank you very much for making this evening so special to us. This is our our first step into this group is called Women Writers in History, and we can say it's Women Writers in Her Story. So here we are. And
thank you for
in this
having
moment.
me, and I can only hope that I have contributed a little bit to that great thing that you're doing. And count on me. I mean, not as a guest, anyhow, that I can help.
Okay, so you will be invited for the next rounds. We hope to have some more contemporary writers, but we shall see. Maybe I can make a little advertisement now because Magdalena asked Sibylan about how it happened, about this book, how it happened, that was it difficult or no. There's a little story about it within the interview with Sibylan Forrester, which will appear in the next issue of Knjiženstva, and that should be in less than a month on our website in both Serbian and English. So you can read how it really happened. Well, thank you, Sibylan, too, for joining us in reading Marija's poetry. Thank you all for being so patient and interested. It wasn't difficult to be interested in Marija's talk and Marija's poetry. And it's good to know that you can read it, if not in your own language, then in English, in a very, very good translation, I have to say.